What's up gamers, Derek here, and today I'm going to answer the age-old question. Can you beat Kirby Super Star Ultra without jumping? Okay, let's get right to it. We're in the first area here and Take two! Hello folks, Derek here with another video in a blatant attempt to chase clout. Today I'll be attempting to beat Kirby Super Star Ultra without pressing the B button. Now, I'm going to assume that 99% of you are here because you just finished Gamechamp's video where she played Kirby Superstar without the Y button. The other 1% are most likely friends, family, and other subscribers who made the mistake of thinking my content is worth watching instead. Thank you! Just for you, I'll go over the basics of the challenge. Kirby Super Star Ultra is a DS remake of Super Nintendo classic Kirby Superstar, the third game in the Sakurai timeline. Here, pressing the B button makes Kirby inhale enemies, and if he finds himself with a copy ability, makes use of that copy ability, usually by attacking foes. Think of it as the primary attack button. Now don't mistake this for a pacifist run. Kirby still has ways to hurt his foes without the B button. There's the slide move, the gentle and automatic release of air when touching the ground, and most surprisingly, guarding. Believe it or not, this is one of our best tools in this run. Guarding just right against an enemy will deal a small amount of damage. It might not be immediately noticeable, but keep chipping away and eventually you'll be saying bye-bye to the bad guys. With that in mind, we're almost ready to start, but first I need to make something very clear up front. During this run, I made generous use of save states. As much as I would love it if I could dedicate all my free time to being good at being bad at video games, I'm just not in a spot where I can do that at the moment. Challenge runs like this one are generally out of my wheelhouse, so I don't normally make videos like these. What I do make, though, are informational videos, so at the very least, consider this an informational video. After all, this video is about how I managed to beat this game without the B button. So if you think you can do better, you probably can, and I sincerely hope that you do. Alright, still willing to give this a watch? Okay, let's get right to it. Spring Breeze! We're in the first area here? No. Well, it turns out that the easiest boss in Kirby is also the worst one to try without the B button. Slide kicks don't work, air puffs don't work, and there's just no way to pull off guard damage here. Like it or not, we have to get our hands on an ability if we want to keep going. Since most of the abilities use the B button to attack, that throws most of them off the table, and what's left on the table is PP. That's right, Parasol and Plasma. Parasol is handy because the Parasol in question gives us evil vibes just by being held. All Kirby has to do is stand next to someone and they get hurt. Haha, delightful. Plasma is a little more useful, but also a little more demanding. You can build up a lot of static by mashing the D-pad. The intended use is that this builds up a powerful attack you can launch at your enemies. But the secondary use is that this creates a shield that will protect us from more things than a simple guard would. The other benefit is that this plasma shield is shocking enough to hurt things that come into contact with it, which is extremely useful for this challenge run. And even better, Kirby doesn't need to be running to build up a charge. Just guard in place and rotate the D-pad and you'll be a near unstoppable force. Huh? Oh, right, the tree. So how do we get the abilities? Kirby Superstar tends to have pedestals of copy essence hanging around, but Spring Breeze is an exception. It's essentially a mini-remake of the original Game Boy game, so you'll have to get powers the regular way, with inhaling. And I know what you're thinking, the original game didn't have copy abilities. And it sounds like Spring Breeze wasn't supposed to have any either if Sakurai got his way. Luckily for me in this run though, we have an opportunity to grab a much needed ability. This spot right here with two Poppy Brothers Jr.'s in it. We're going to have to use a carefully timed B press to inhale them both at the same time. This will cause a mix to happen. Now instinct would have you believe that you need to hit the B button to stop the roulette. But luckily we can press any other face button to stop it. And as long as it lands on Plasma, the run can keep going. With Plasma in hand, we can finally beat up Wispywoods. All it takes is just running up next to him, guarding in place, and charging up your Plasma shield. Oh wow, I hope the rest of the game doesn't have this much exposition. With some careful playing, you'll make it to the next boss, Lololo and Lalala. They shouldn't give you too much trouble, though I do recommend staying on the bottom level. Charging the Plasma shield while guarding can have disastrous consequences over thin platforms. In the next stage, you'll hit the next boss, Kracko Jr. Standing around and waiting for him to touch your shock shield is good, but also watch out for when he starts dropping bombs. Stand where the last bomb is going to be, have your shield up, and Kracko Jr. will take damage from an explosion meant for you. As a matter of fact, all bosses in this game who try to hurt you with bombs are vulnerable to bombs. Keep that in mind. With one angry half-cloud behind us, we can easily go through this room just by taking this delightful open path up here. there is no reason to think that anything in this room could have halted our progress. Eventually, you'll face the bigger cloud, Kracko. Kracko is also not much of a threat. Just stand in one place and wait for him to bob around near you, and he'll evaporate in no time. And if you're worried about the Waddle-Doos, don't be. The plasma shield protects you from their beams, and if they run into you, they'll take damage. Onward to the final fight, King Dedede. Tragically, King Dedede was born with a condition that prevents him from finishing his attack animation if it gets interrupted. It's terminal. Spring Breeze done with 1 B press. Next up is Dynablade. There's less bosses to worry about here, but navigating might be an issue. Right off the bat in Stage 1, this bomb block here is preventing us from going forward. Kirby's slide doesn't reach that far, and the air puff from landing can't reach either. I'm afraid there's no way forward without having to press the B button. The same issue shows up a little later in Stage 3, forcing another button press. Now, by this point in the game, you do have access to a free wheel essence in Stage 2, and using that, I could create a helper using the X button to do the dirty work for me. Unfortunately, helpers aren't compelled to attack if something isn't a threat, so relying on the computer isn't an option. You might be familiar with a different strategy of having the second player pick up the controller and pressing the self-destruct button next to the blocks to have them explode. While that might work here, Kirby Super Star Ultra has multi-card multiplayer for this part of the game. That means I would need 2 Nintendo DS's and 2 copies of the game, and I only have 3 of these things. You might be thinking that I neglected to be thorough and spend money on a second copy of the game, thereby making the overall challenge harder for me, but I prefer to say that this is just a solo human player challenge. In Stage 4, there's a secret button you can press that opens up a room full of copy abilities that you can grab whenever you want. This is important because it gives us a free parasol ability that we'll be using against Dynablade. Normally I would be using Plasma, but the room with Plasma in it is locked off by a secret button in Stage 2 that's walled off by a bomb that Kirby can't reach and helpers don't view as a threat. When you're ready, bring an umbrella to a bird fight and stand around carefully to bring her down. The Parasol's neutral stance is what will be doing damage, so you won't have a guard to protect you here. Once you've decided that these baby birds would be better off with Wispy Woods, it's on to the next game. Dynablade done with 2 B presses. Next up is Gourmet Race. Next up is Great Cave Offensive. We're not in it for the money here, we just need to escape. It won't take long, I promise. Pretty soon you'll find your way to a fight against Fatty Whale. I have some excellent news. Kirby is immune to anything Fatty Whale does as long as he's guarding. Just walk on in, find a spot, and hold down the guard button. He never stood a chance. The next area shouldn't be too bad. Try to grab an ability and create a helper though. I'll be taking my good friend, Knuckle Joe. Yeah, that's right. You might need him for the fight against the computer virus. Generally, it's pretty easy to guard, stand under it, and wait it out, but if Parasol or Plasma comes your way during the fight, all the better. Next up is the Old Castle, a protected landmark with surprisingly clean restrooms. Moving on is the final area. Luckily for us, there's a free Parasol right before the final room. Enter and face a boss that I feel very comfortable about showing on screen, Wham Bam Rock. Carefully navigate around his masterful hand movements and brush against him with your Parasol. If he makes this fist or does the finger walk, you'll want to immediately dodge it. His grab is also similar to his pound, so be ready to move out of the way. With our little spelunking trip over, we're finally out of the cave without using any— oh no. Kirby might not be allowed to break blocks with his head, but helpers can. Have someone else bump into this block and we're out of here without using any button presses. Next up is Revenge of Meta Knight. Dear God, Revenge of Meta Knight. This one is a doozy. We're on a time limit to get through this mode, so you gotta keep up the pace. Now, Iron Man is an easy enough fight. Lure her into a corner with your guard and she'll go down in no time. Kirby is tragically unable to break simple blocks underwater, so we're stuck having to use a B button press here. It is absolutely necessary to get the Parasol here. Use it to put an end to 3 trees and keep going. After an explosive double bonkers fight, we have another problem. We're stuck with another block that Kirby can't break without using a B press. Make that 2 blocks. A little while later, you have what looks to be another problem. You need to go into this cannon to move on, but that fuse needs to be lit. By fire. Instinct is that you absorb a fire ability and light it, right? Well, to save us from a couple button presses, we can simply kill our helper, have it absorb the fire, where it knows it has to light the fuse, and off we go! After a fight where Poppy Brothers Sr. and Jewel Kid team up on you, you'll soon be faced with the greatest challenge yet. Main Cannon number 2. This is going to be difficult. Main cannon number 2 is vulnerable to its own bombs, but it's very hard to pull that off consistently. The lower cannon will take damage by guarding, but getting rid of it won't bring you any closer to bringing down the health bar. Bring a helper with you, and it seems like their priority is to get rid of the lower cannon first. You might have to let them get that out of their system before you take down the big one. There's a good chance they'll die here too, but with any luck they'll touch a cannonball in their dying moments and reform into a PBJ. The best thing I could do during this mess was hope my ally would attack the main cannon while Kirby crouches down in the corner here. He takes a hit initially, but the guard keeps him from taking any more contact damage. At least until the hand starts aiming at you. This fight is a chaotic mess, and I feel lucky I even passed it, even with save states. Honestly, I don't think my strategy was very good at all. But if you leave luck to heaven, then eventually the cannon will go down. Soon after that, we get a little section here with bomb blocks. And lucky for us, we have a PBJ helper that we can coax to drop some bombs here, just as long as enemies are around. Once you hit this copy essence room, grab your saving grace, the plasma, and keep moving forward. The heavy lobster fight begins with an auto-scroller, and with generous use of automatic air puffs and kicks, you'll make it through. The actual battle against heavy lobster isn't so bad. Keep your shield up and be wary of his grab attack. A little bit after its toast is this windy area. It might look daunting, but you can simply float under the bomb walls to go forward. Eventually, you'll fight the reactor that kills itself. After the reactor that kills itself, you're in the final stretch. During this auto-scroller segment, there's a block that's just a tad too high, so it needs a B-press intervention. Alright, I hope you held on to your plasma, and I certainly hope you're making good time. The game is going to throw these mini-bosses at you. Once they're done, enter the door to the Meta Knight fight and waste the next couple seconds waiting for the sword to go away. You'll need to play aggressively and cautiously with your plasma guard to have any hope of winning this fight. You'll be protected from Meta Knight's melee attacks, but when he starts getting the tornadoes out, you better get out of the way. If you die here, you're going to have to start a ways back to grab another plasma. While a regular guard does chip away at his health, I'm honestly not certain there's enough time to pull that off in this fight. But maybe I've just gotten too soft relying on plasma shields so much. And now for the final stretch, the escape sequence! Come on, Kirby, you can do it! Okay, well, with as little time as there is left, and Meta Knight making a final stand against you, you're not going to be able to get out of here just by casually drifting. Put the pedal to the metal with a B-press, and please keep an eye on the terrain. The hills and walls have a chance to slow you down or make you crash, losing your precious B-press turbo. Once we're finally off the halberd, we can consider this mode done with. Good riddance, Meta Knight. May you never come back to haunt me. Next up is Milky Way Wishes. While the level select is more free-form here, we have a rigid path we gotta follow right now. The first planet we're going to is, to pick up the copy ability. What could that possibly be used for? Simple. We're going to make attack pop out. And then, we're going to mech eye so Tack can hit his head on this bomb block. And then, we're going to navigate this place until we can pick up the plasma ability. And then, we're going to fight Heavy Lobster again. And then, we're going to win. In Milky Way Wishes, you're not in any danger of losing your abilities for good, so you can create a Plasma Wiz helper and become Plasma anytime you want. Now it's just trekking through the galaxy wherever you want to go. Just a couple notes here. In Aquarius, we run into the underwater block problem, so Kirby has to use a B-press to move on here. Seems like I can't be saved by the ability select animation this time. Oh well. In Half Moon, this room will constantly be pushing Kirby up past the door. While you would normally need to use the B-press to release some air and drop down here, we can actually just switch abilities to get ourselves down. The boss of this area is also an updated version of the computer virus that has 2 new, more powerful forms. You can generally use the same strategy of keeping up a plasma guard to whittle away at it. The rest of the bosses are also pretty familiar. 2 Trees, Anchored Cloud, Guard Strat's Whale, Rock Jackson, Chameleon Arm. Oh right, we didn't fight him in the cave, did we? Chameleon Arm is a little tricky because he likes to grab you with his tongue and also suspend himself on the wall. He does telegraph when he's about to use his tongue, so watch out for it. Even if he goes invisible, you should be able to recognize the windup for that move. So even when you can't see him, you should see it coming. Carefully graze this guy, and that's another boss down. Once you've got all the planets conquered, go directly to Nova and wish this game was a shoot-'em-up. Now instinct probably makes you think that you need to press the B button to get through this segment, but luckily for us on this run, this ship will shoot with any of the face buttons. Just play this segment like you normally would with any other button, and you're fine. Let's wrap it up with Marks. Your Plasma Guard will keep you safe from most of Marks' moves, like the Arrow Onslaught or the Vines. The ones to watch out for are the Black Hole and the Laser Beam. Watch out for when he's about to pull those moves off, and you've got this in the bag. The galaxy is saved, the sun and moon have stopped fighting, and all it took is one tiny B press. Next up is everyone's favorite boss rush, the arena. Grab a plasma, grab a helper if you want, and get going. You're going to need all the luck, so brace yourself. Use the previous strategies to take down all the other bosses. Bosses like Dynablade and Main Cannon number 2 are much more manageable when you have the Plasma Guard on, but do still play cautiously. Most of the mid-bosses shouldn't be too much trouble either. Some like Mr. Frosty have a grab attack you need to occasionally watch out for, and Ju-Kid and this neglected character are more aggressive about getting hands-on with Kirby. But keep in mind that Ju-Kid's grabs instantly knock your ability out, which will put you at a disadvantage if you're relying on Plasma Guard. If you do lose it but want to keep going, Plasma or Parasol have a random chance of showing up in between rounds or during the computer virus match. So if you want to try using pure guard strats for a while, you're not completely screwed over. When you've beaten every other boss in the game, the well that can't hurt you, and killed an innocent Waddle Dee, you'll face Marks one more time. Use the same strategy from Milky Way Wishes and the arena is over without pressing a single button. That's it! You're done! You've beaten everything in Kirby Super Star! Congrats! Nobody is falling for this bit! Okay, now onto the stuff I'm sure you waited to see. The DS exclusive modes. Next up is Revenge of the King. This game is Spring Breeze, except it's a hard mode with most of the enemies replaced, which itself is a reference to Kirby's Dream Land also having a hard mode with most of its enemies replaced. And just like Spring Breeze, there's no copy essences in sight, which means Wispy's Revenge is unbeatable without having an ability. Just like the first go-around, we need to find a spot where we can get the mixed ability, stop the roulette on Plasma, and we're back in business. But before we can even feel the wrath of an unmoving tree, we've got a new mid-boss to deal with. Fan. Most of the mid-bosses in Kirby Superstar were imported from Kirby's Adventure, but some didn't get to come back for the Super Nintendo entry. Here in Revenge of the King, though, all the remaining mid-bosses return, which means that everyone is here! Oh, well, sorry. Fan replaced the NES game's Rolling Turtle in the GBA remake of Kirby's Adventure, so it's sort of like a remake reunion. With that history lesson out of the way, Fan is finally still kicking my butt. Fan is, in my experience, the hardest mini-boss to deal with in this challenge run. Now, it might be due to my reckless playstyle of wanting to be up against bosses when I use the Plasma Guard, but getting that close to him will cause him to grab and toss you instantly without remorse. Maybe if I just float above and graze him from the top? Nope, that didn't work. Maybe if I try sliding under him when he jumps? Whoa, that was close. Okay, let's try that again. Oh, he got me again. Okay, the most reliable way I was able to beat this freak was just standing close enough to graze him from the side, but not close enough to get grabbed. After some careful playing, and save states, I finally beat the first boss of Revenge of the King. And also some weird goth tree. Stage 2, and nothing much different here. These heroes from another franchise have added an extra row to their fight, but you can just keep picking a spot and waiting for them to show up. Stage 3, now comes Goth Kracko Jr. He's a little more erratic than before, but keep your Plasma Guard up and you'll be fine. You'll need to be a little more quick on the draw to get to the end of his bomb drop pattern, or you'll miss a chance to do a chunk of damage. At the end, we face Goth Kracko. This one is going to be more of a game of patience compared to his original fight. You'll definitely want to keep your distance by being on the opposite side of the arena that he's on. Goth Kracko's beam attack will break through your Plasma Guard, so it's not recommended you stay in the middle where he can hurt you. The other devastating move is the screen-filling lightning. It is very simple to dodge though, just stand where it can't go and it can't hurt you. Just like before, he starts getting more rowdy on the ground once he loses more health, and your patience is paid off. Next up is a new level, another shoot 'em up. Here we'll be facing Kabula, a boss from the original Game Boy game that also failed to come back for Spring Breeze. Finally reunited with the rest of the cast. Anyway, just like with the Galactic Nova Nucleus, press a button that is not B, and you're good to go. Finally, DDD's castle has undergone a complete makeover. You'll be trekking through the castle a bit more before making it to the final fight. Here you'll be facing all the new mini-bosses added to ROTK, which tragically means another awful fight with this stupid elephant. I'm tired of elephants! Ah! The rest of the new bosses are also not much of a challenge to your Plasma Guard, so once they're out of the picture, move through the castle and eventually, oh, well this bites. Kirby currently has no moves he can do here without pressing the B button. Kicks won't work, Puffs won't work, and worst of all in this emergency situation, the B moves he does have also won't work. I'm afraid even the best Plasma Shock can't break blocks under you. No, we're going to have to do something far worse. We're going to create a helper and use B to swallow 4 blocks. With any luck, the helper will be goaded into attacking this enemy, which will destroy the bomb block for us. But because I'm not feeling confident in tackling this next boss without Plasma, I'm going to suck it up again. Jeez Louise. If there's a better way to tackle this section, I wouldn't know it. Anyway, on to the final boss, Masked DDD. Our friend fights more aggressively than in the original Spring Breeze, and he's not as susceptible to your attacks interrupting his animations. Keep an eye on his hammer. If he swings it up slightly, you're fine. If he swings it back halfway, he's going to jump and you can zip under him. If he swings it back all the way, he's about to start bashing. The last dangerous move to watch out for is when he swings his hammer towards him like this. That's when he's going to start spinning, and you do not want to be caught in that path. You also don't want to be caught in the electric fence surrounding the arena. Very carefully hover between the king and the barrier to survive the attack. With enough patience and planning, you've gotten revenge on the king. And if you did what I did, it was with 6 horrible B presses. Next up is everyone's favorite boss rush, Helper to Hero. In this mode, we can play directly as one of the helpers through a truncated arena. While we have 20 characters to choose from, knowing what we know about abilities, we really only have 2 viable options here. Come on down, Plasma Wisp. It's for the best one, LD, trust me. Plasma Wisp is in an even better position to take down these bosses than Kirby. It can float in the air, and while guarding it stays in one place. This makes bosses that have a lot of above ground time like Krako and Chameleon go by much quicker. And if they stick to the ground a lot, it's even better. It just hovers slightly above them to graze them, and they can't do anything. Suckers. After taking down most of the bosses in a harmless way, whoops. Yeah, gotta be careful. Move back down here. After taking down most of the bosses in a harmless whale, you'll be up against the final fight, Wham Bam Ram. I mean Rock. Now again, your hover ability works wonders here, since you can hurt his hand in the air. This shouldn't be too hard, and you can finally call Helper to Hero, not done. Immediately after taking out WBR, you'll be facing a boss that I'm less comfortable about showing on screen. Wham Bam Jewel. This crazy counterpart to Rockman is a little more threatening, but just as simple to take down. Focus on hurting him during the same animations that brought the last boss down and avoid contact with any others, and our Helper to Hero becomes a new hero without using any B presses. Next up is Meta Nightmare Ultra. In this mode, Meta Knight is upset that he wasn't in the game more often, so he's taking it upon himself to be the new hero of Kirby Super Star. Meta Knight's moveset is a little different. He can still do a slide kick, but Meta Knight doesn't need to puff up to fly. He has his own set of wings that do that for him. And luckily for us in this run, these wings deal damage to enemies. Meta Knight also doesn't need to copy abilities because he has a sword, which leads me to explaining the bottom screen. When Meta Knight defeats enemies, this bar will fill up with points and let us use the touchscreen for a special move. At a mere 2 points, we can summon Sword Knight or Blade Knight to help us out. At 8 points, we can make our team go faster for a brief period. With 10 points, we can heal both characters. And if we have 30 points, we can pull off the Mach Tornado move, devastating to any foe that dares to stay on screen, including boss types. But how do we get points in the first place? Well, enemies can only give you points if you defeat them with Meta Knight's sword, so passive methods like kicking and flapping won't work. Don't worry, I'm sure we can figure something out. After dealing with PBS here, he explodes and gives us points, because watching mini-bosses explode counts as being defeated by Meta Knight's sword. We now have enough points to summon a friend, so we're going to go ahead and do that and have him go to town on the bad guys for us. We can rack up points this way because being defeated by the Helper counts as being defeated by Meta Knight's sword. With that setup all done, we can take down Spring Breeze with ease. One thing to keep in mind is that it seems like if your Helper is grabbing onto you when you're flying, wing flaps suddenly don't do damage. So try to shake them off if you can help it. Meta Knight's wing flaps work wonders against bosses like Wispy Woods, which means we won't have to use a B press during this fight. Navigating through the rest of the mode and going up against the rest of the bosses won't be much of a challenge with you standing by and your Helper doing the dirty work. With King DDD defeated, we're moving on to the Dynablade stages. Thanks to Meta Knight's wings, we can easily get through these stages without using any B presses. Have Dynablade meet Blade Knight, and move on to the next stage. Meta Knight thinks Gourmet Race is beneath him, so now he's tackling the Great Cave Offensive. With no need to waste time ignoring treasure chests, getting through levels is much more streamlined. Entertain this whale who thinks it can hurt you for a few minutes, and then move on to the computer virus. The computer virus isn't much different with Meta Knight, but I want to use this opportunity to talk about strategy. Since healing works on both you and the helper, my recommendation is to only use it if Meta Knight's low on health. Otherwise, if your friend gets beaten up, no biggie, just make a new one. And if you're getting impatient watching the fight, you can always use a Mock Tornado to speed things up, just as long as you're sure you'll have enough points left in the bank to outlast the fight. Once this is over, Meta Knight is legally obligated to skip the castle and head directly towards Wham Bam Rock. With this boss crushed once again, escape the cavern and let's move on to, Revenge of Meta Knight. Upset with what a terrible job the Halberd crew did against Kirby, Meta Knight has decided to rebuild the entire ship only to take it all down once again. Funnily enough, this is where things start getting rough for Meta Knight. While he can break a few blocks that Kirby had trouble with, Meta Knight is also powerless to do anything that's not a B press underwater. Yes, if you can believe it, not even the mighty Mock Tornado can break blocks. We're going to have to use a button press here. Meta Knight is also at a disadvantage thanks to his backup. During the section with the mandatory cannon fuse, you can't change your helper to have a fire ability, and as we all know, you can't light a match with a sword. You're stuck having to press the B button to light a match with Meta Knight's sword to move on. Oh god, use the Mock Tornado, please! I want this nightmare to end! Ah! In this area, Kirby was able to get through it due to having a PBJ goaded into attacking the bomb blocks. Unfortunately, Blade Knight and Sword Knight just aren't up to the task, which means we have to use a few more button presses during this segment. Once you beat the reactor that kills itself, Meta Knight sees no point in sticking around to fight Meta Knight and leaves for the next stage. Milky Way Wishes. You don't have to worry about copy abilities here and can just play through the levels, only stopped by this measly block underwater. Say goodbye to this harmless mammal, continue wreaking havoc through the galaxy, and then wish you didn't have to fight Marks. Capping off Meta Knightmare Ultra is the fight against the new boss, Galactonite. He very much plays like a harder version of Meta Knight. Guard against the melee attacks, watch out for any tornadoes, and kick around any of these jerks that show up. Once this clash of swords ends, the mode is over using a total of 7 B presses. With every other game completed, it's time to wrap things up with everyone's favorite boss rush, the True Arena. Despite the name, this one only focuses on bosses introduced in the DS exclusive modes, and is not a hellish buffet of every single boss, old and new. Pick up Plasma and pray. Use the strategies that helped get you through Revenge of the King before and you should be alright. Oh, another Fan fight? Well, guess what, Fan, I got you beat this time. Lure Fan to one side of the screen and then jump around it. Now if you mess up when trying to hit him, Fan will grab you like always. But, with so much distance between you and the edge of the screen, you won't take any damage. Ha! Eat dirt, Fanny. Hey, wait a minute. It all comes down to the final 4. A set of 4 boss fights that have a rigid order. You're already familiar with the Masked King, so that shouldn't be a problem. This is your first time facing Wham Glam Rock as Kirby, but the strategy remains the same. Play it like you're facing the original boss and you should be fine. You just don't have the advantage of floating. This is also your first time fighting Galactonite as Kirby, but the strategy remains the same. Play it like you're facing Meta Knight and you should be fine. You just don't have the advantage of a helper, healing, or a super move. Finally, it's the final boss, exclusive to the True Arena, Mark's Soul. This is where it all ends. If you're familiar with the attacks of the original, then this is in the bag. Avoid the classics like black holes and the Hyper Beam. New things to watch out for are these large energy spheres and a paintball attack. Dodge the balls and keep your guard up during the Splatfest to survive. Another thing to note here, when Marks tried to attack from under you originally, it couldn't break through your plasma guard. But Mark's Soul will chip away at it. If you have the health for it, it probably won't bug you too much, but keep it in mind if you need to save any sliver of health you can. Eventually, you'll be able to have beaten the True Arena without using a single B press. Which means that after 11 games, 3 boss rushes, and 6 encounters with a whale that doesn't do anything, we can finally say... Mission complete. Well, how did I do? 22 B presses, huh? That's probably not all that bad, but I'm sure people can do better. There's most likely room for improvement if you can exploit the Player 2 self-destruct button. Besides that, it's probably possible to just throw out most of my strategies and see if you can beat as many bosses as possible with just regular guarding. Or trying it without relying on a CPU helper. Or doing Meta Knightmare Ultra without using any of the touchscreen powers. It's just like I said near the beginning. This is only my way of beating a game like this. How you want to tackle it is best done after asking yourself, can I beat Kirby Super Star Ultra's minimal B-press challenge? thank you very much for watching. And a big shout out to Gamechamp. Without her, I doubt I would have even tried to do this. If you want to see more videos like this one, you should definitely check out her channel instead. If you want more videos from me, check out Nin Chronicles, a series where I talk about Nintendo's library of games. And if you're under the impression I deserve money for any of this, well, I'm trying out Patreon. We'll see if that goes somewhere. But for now, make fun of Fatty Whale in the comments and welcome to my house. Oh wait, I messed that up!